They told me, "You're on your own financially." Then a week later, they handed my brother condo keys, 2 bedrooms, a lake view, a ribbon on the door. No one asked if I had rent money. No one noticed when I disappeared. 4 years later, my name hit Forbes, and my research changed everything. That's when my mother showed up uninvited, smiling like she owned the place. She said she'd come to celebrate, but in her purse was a piece of paper that made my blood freeze. I thought she wanted forgiveness. She wanted something else, something worth exactly $1 million. Before I dive deep into the story, hit like and drop a comment telling me where you're listening from. I would love to know. My name is James Hayes. I grew up in a house that looked normal from the street. 2 stories, trimmed hedges, the kind of place where neighbors waved from driveways and said, "Nice family." Inside, though, it was like living in a play where I was the understudy who never went on stage. My mother, Margaret, ran the house like a director with one favorite actor, my brother Samuel. Every conversation circled back to him. Every photo on the mantel had him in the center. If I was in the frame at all, it was by accident. Samuel sparkled. He was the athlete, the baby boy, the one Mom called her miracle. When he played, Dad stood up to record it. When I brought home straight A's, he didn't even look up from his newspaper. Mom would say, "We don't brag in this house, James." But somehow, bragging about Samuel was fine. At 16, Samuel got a car with a red bow. I got his old bus pass and a reminder to be grateful. Dinner was the same script every night. Dad talking about work, Mom praising Samuel, me clearing plates while pretending not to care. The smell of lemon detergent became the scent of invisibility. I told myself I was strong, that being invisible meant I was independent. But even then, I knew it was a lie. When I got into college, I rehearsed my request for help with tuition for days. I waited until Dad was relaxed, newspaper folded, TV humming low. "I'll need help with room and board," I said carefully. Mom didn't look up from her laundry basket. Dad just muttered, "You've got scholarships, right? You're 18 now. You'll manage." Those words sliced deeper than they sounded. You're on your own financially. That night, I filled out loan forms under a dim lamp while Samuel slept peacefully across the hall. I wasn't angry, just hollow like a door had quietly closed, and no one noticed I was still standing outside. College was a blur of labs, ramen, and side jobs. I sent short texts home at first, still hoping someone might ask if I was okay. They didn't. The family group chat kept glowing. Samuel's new car, Samuel's vacations, Samuel's engagement to a girl with perfect hair. I learned to mute the notifications. When Dr. Elena Cruz took me on as her research assistant, I started to feel something new, seen. She called me meticulous. She said, "You don't just follow instructions, you think." No one had ever said that to me before. She introduced me to the quiet rhythm of the lab, the hum of centrifuges, the clean scent of ethanol, the small thrill when an experiment worked. It was the first place that didn't demand I shrink myself. By the time I graduated, I'd built a wall of calm around me. I'd stopped waiting for approval, stopped asking for help. I believed I was free from them, until one photo shattered that illusion. Samuel again, a condo key in his hand, a lake glimmering behind him. Caption, "Happy 21st, baby boy." And in the background, a red bow, the same shade as the one he got on his car years ago. That's when I realized, some gifts don't stop hurting, they just change shape. The photo burned through me more quietly than anger ever could. I didn't throw my phone, didn't cry, didn't call. I just stared at that red ribbon until the screen dimmed. It was the same shade as every time they'd celebrated Samuel, like the color itself had been reserved for his victories. 2 bedrooms, granite counters, lake view. The post said it all. There wasn't a single message asking, "How are you, James?" I set the phone down face first and returned to my notes, recording polymer dissolution rates like nothing had happened. But something did something final. After that, home stopped being a place and became a concept I'd outgrown. My scholarship covered rent in a campus basement apartment, thin walls, humming pipes, the faint smell of instant noodles that never left. I spent nights in the lab chasing numbers instead of sleep. Dr. Cruz would check in on me, asking if I ever took a break. I'd shrug. Breaks are expensive. She'd smile sadly, as if she knew that sentence meant more than I said. The next semester, she called me into her office, warm light, books stacked in gentle chaos, a half-finished cup of coffee beside her laptop. "James," she said, "you're different lately. Not in a bad way, just focused. Whatever you're chasing, I hope it's for you, not against someone else." I wanted to say it was both, but I just nodded. When Stanford offered me a fully funded PhD position, I didn't tell my parents. I didn't even tell Samuel. I packed my car, a dented Honda, trunk full of notebooks and wilted plants, and drove until the highway signs said California. Somewhere between mile markers, I stopped feeling like a son. I was something else now. Stanford was a different planet. People there didn't measure worth in attention. They measured it in discovery. I belonged to the midnight shift of the lab pipettes, playlists, fluorescent lights. For once, silence didn't mean neglect. It meant focus. Every now and then, my phone would light up with the family chat photos from holidays I wasn't invited to, Samuel's engagement party, Mom's captions about my beautiful boys. I'd scroll through them with the detached curiosity of a stranger. Then one day, a text came just to me. "Heard you finished your PhD. Congratulations. Maybe now you can help your brother with his business idea." No question mark after the congratulations, just expectation. I deleted the message and blocked the number. Years passed. My work turned into a startup, a small biotech company built from long nights and stubborn faith. Mark Reynolds came aboard as a partner, sharp, kind, grounded. We built something that mattered, something real. When investors called, they called me Dr. Hayes, the same name that once meant nothing in my family group chat, now opened doors in places they'd never stepped foot in. Success came quietly at first, then all at once, funding rounds, headlines, an acquisition offer, and that's when the noise found me again. A friend texted, "Your mom just posted about you." I opened Facebook for the first time in years. There it was, Margaret Hayes, smiling proudly beside Samuel. So proud of my sons. One runs a business, the other just made a scientific breakthrough. A mother's sacrifices are finally worth it. Sacrifices. The word sat like lead in my throat. I stared at that post until the edges blurred. It wasn't just a lie. It was a rewrite. She'd erased years of silence and replaced them with gratitude she never gave. For a moment, I wanted to comment, to remind her I hadn't spoken to her in nearly a decade. But then I realized she didn't post that for me. She posted it for herself. So I did nothing. And that's what drove her crazy. Weeks later, my assistant buzzed in through the intercom. "James, there's a woman here asking for you. Says she's family." I froze. Family. The word I'd buried years ago. "Send her in," I said, voice steady but heartbeat sharp. When the door opened, I smelled her perfume before I saw her vanilla and guilt, both too sweet to be real. She looked exactly as I remembered, immaculate hair, pearls, a confidence that filled any room before she spoke. "James," she said, arms wide like this was a reunion, not an intrusion. I stood up slowly. "Mom?" She glanced around my office, taking inventory, glass walls, framed patents, the hum of success. "So, this is where all the genius happens," she said. "You didn't even tell us. Imagine my surprise reading about my own son in Forbes." I forced a smile. "You could have called." "Oh, I did," she said lightly. "You changed your number. I figured you were just busy, so I thought I'd visit. Family should celebrate together, right?" Her tone dripped honey, but her eyes were scanning my desk, searching for something. I motioned to the chair. "Sit." She opened her purse with deliberate care and pulled out a folded sheet of paper. "Actually," she said, "I came because I've been thinking a lot about everything I've done for you. All the sacrifices, the years of raising you boys. It hasn't been easy." Something cold crept down my spine. "What are you talking about?" She unfolded the paper and slid it across my desk. "This," she said, smiling. I glanced down typed lines, itemized, private school tuition, meals, emotional labor, and at the bottom, a neat total. $1 million. It wasn't a joke. I looked up. You're asking me to pay you $1 million for being my mother? Her smile didn't move, but her eyes hardened. For everything I gave up. For all the things you could never repay. My breath caught. Family doesn't work like that. Family, she snapped, voice suddenly sharp. Family doesn't abandon the woman who gave them everything. I swallowed hard. You chose to have me, Mom. Children don't owe their parents for being born. For the first time, she faltered. Then she leaned closer. Can't, or won't? I could have had a life, a career, a husband who stayed, but instead, I gave it all to you. Her words echoed, but something inside me stayed still. I'd lived my life, trying not to upset her. That ended here. I'll help with your expenses, I said quietly. But not this. Her face froze. Then you're no longer my son. She stood, smoothed her jacket, and headed for the door. At the frame, she turned back. Your father would be ashamed of what you've become. And when she left, the silence that followed wasn't empty. It was heavy, alive, and mercifully final. For a long time after the door shut, I didn't move. The hum of the AC filled the silence. She left behind a sterile white noise that almost sounded like peace. Then it hit me all at once. The tremor, the disbelief, the quiet ache that felt older than my bones. I sat back in my chair and stared at that piece of paper on my desk. $1 million. An invoice for motherhood. When the tears finally came, they weren't loud. They were measured like something my body had been storing for decades, finally leaking through a crack. By morning, I wasn't crying anymore. I was done. I walked into the lab early before sunrise, before anyone else could see the wreckage on my face. The machines hummed softly, steady, and loyal. I started a new synthesis, wrote notes with the same precision I always had, and told myself, this was how you heal. With order, with proof, with meaning. Dr. Cruz found me an hour later holding a cup of coffee. She looked at me, then at the empty space behind my eyes. She came, didn't she? I didn't ask how she knew. She always knew. She wants money, I said. $1 million. Dr. Cruz didn't flinch. And what do you want? I thought for a long moment. Peace, I said. But I don't think it's refundable. Dr. Cruz didn't press further. She just set the coffee on my desk and said softly, then make peace your next project. For the next few days, I functioned on autopilot formulas, data, deadlines, all mechanical. But at night, the silence clawed at me. I kept replaying her voice. Then you're no longer my son. It echoed not as anger, but as a confirmation of something I'd always known deep down. I was never really hers to lose. 3 nights later, I went home and finally broke. I sat on the bathroom floor, not crying, not thinking, just sitting. The tiles were cold, the fluorescent light harsh, the kind of light that shows every crack on your face. I picked up my phone, scrolled to Mom in my contacts, and stared at it. Then I deleted the number, not out of hate, out of acceptance. You can't lose someone who was never truly there. I stayed like that until morning light slid under the door, thin and gold. I didn't pray. I didn't curse. I just breathed and realized it was the first peaceful breath I'd taken in years. The next week, the company finalized its acquisition. I signed papers that officially made me worth more than I'd ever imagined. Mark threw a small celebration in the office, champagne, laughter, the kind of joy that feels earned. But even in that noise, I stayed quiet. Someone asked, "Are your parents coming to the launch party?" I smiled politely. No, they wouldn't know where to park. Everyone laughed, thinking it was a joke. I didn't correct them. When the interview requests started, every journalist wanted to know what inspired me. They expected a heartwarming story, a childhood of encouragement, a mother's faith, a father's wisdom. Instead, I told them the truth. I built what I needed but never had a place where people are seen for their work, not their worth to someone else. The quote went viral. People called it profound, For me, it was just survival turned into language. Months passed. The world moved on. But one morning, a letter showed up at my office. Handwritten. No return address. The handwriting was unmistakable. Margaret Hayes. Inside, one sentence. I'm sorry, James. I didn't know how to love you. No apology for the money. No explanation. Just that. I folded the letter neatly, placed it in the top drawer of my desk, and left it there, not as forgiveness, not as closure, but as proof. Proof that even the people who hurt you can sometimes see the wreckage they caused. I never wrote back. That night, I stood on my balcony overlooking the city, the hum of traffic below, lights stretching endlessly. And for the first time, I didn't feel small. I didn't feel like the forgotten son. I felt like someone who had survived his own beginning. Success didn't fill the hole she left, but it gave it edges. And that's something. People always talk about forgiveness like it's a finish line. It isn't. It's a decision you remake every day to stop bleeding from wounds you didn't cause. Sometimes peace doesn't come from healing the relationship. It comes from realizing you were never the broken one. If you grew up unseen, unheard, or unloved, this story is you too. You're not the problem. You're the proof that light can exist without permission. If this story found you, please subscribe and tell me where you're listening from.